Maybe you'll have seen my buying guide before seeing this review. If so, thanks, I appreciate you. But regardless of if you have or not, even more likely is that you have heard of the Apex 4. What a sick controller, like top tier amongst an infinite like selection. Starting this review with the obvious statement that this thing kicks ass. Let's jump straight. D-pad, shoulders, paddles, 4 of them, and function buttons are tactile. Face buttons are mechanical, sticks and triggers are analog. If it's not the first controller review you see from me, you'll know that I'm coming around with mechanic buttons, and this Apex 4 is no exception. But chances are you might not be familiar with what all that means. If you don't be shy, let me know in the comments and I'll provide a crash course of simple explanations. I'm going a bit fast, hopefully you won't mind, because this thing has so many more features than the average controller. Starting with the sticks, they have a nice metal ring to prevent the friction of the circumference, which is more and more common these days. The most impressive feature is one that could look like it was part of the aesthetic. Here's the thing, that whole cover is also held by magnets and can be removed. To do that, you must take off the sticks. It does require a bit of force, and the D-pad as well. Now that we can remove the cover, you see that little tab sticking out? Well, that's actually a mini flathead, and it is used to change the tension of your analogs by turning those little tachometers looking knobs. And that feature should set the stage for just how extra that controller is. While we have that cover removed, that little Flydigi inscribed thing here can be removed as well. And in the box is 4 tabs with a little scratch pin so that you can make your own. My penship game is weak to say the least, so I did not attempt this myself, but it's a cool touch. We see both rotary motors, and the weights that Flydigi have on these controllers make the rumble feel about on par with Microsoft's one. No HD rumble or special maglev motors of sorts, but what is there is familiar and is perfectly fine. Now quickly, based off of what kit you buy, you have options for a charging dock, as those 2 pins at the bottom will hint, and also a cell phone mount, as you can see up top next to the USB-C. So if you are watching this video trying to determine if you should get one, do keep that in mind when shopping around, as getting the accessories after the fact might be a little more complicated. Turning our attention to the triggers. Much like our sticks, they have a hidden talent. I mentioned the PS5 DualSense a minute ago, and much like it, this controller can have adaptive feedback trigger functionality. You know how when you shoot a gun in Ratchet & Clank, for example, your trigger vibrates as with the recoil of a gun? Well, these triggers can do the same, but differently. So of course, for that feature to work on PS5 and some select PC titles, this needs to be coded into the game, and for said game to have the features enabled. In that sense, it's cleverly designed based off of game mechanics and game situations. Well, Flydigi not necessarily have that tight a hold like Sony does on games, so rather, they give you the choice to set it in the best way possible. You have 3 ways to do that. The first one is on the controller itself by using that little screen on it, and yeah, it has a screen. You can pick one of 6 behaviors of your triggers. Normal, which shuts the feature down. Race, which is meant to reflect the resistance of a pedal, where momentum can make you go 0 to 100% immediately, but dosing it gives it just a slight resistance. Very, very good for precision. Sniper, which has that initial resistance to get past, as if you have the mechanical response of a gun's trigger. It's really good to set your fingers with minimal tension, ready to pop in a millisecond when you're ready to make your move. Recoil, which will vibrate as would a semi-auto weapon like, say, an SMG. I find that one has a nice brain association aspect to it, but it can also backfire, no pun intended. If you're holding it on an empty clip, for example, it won't stop vibrating even if you're out of bullets, obviously. Trigger lock, now that one is special. It has 3 settings that will gradually lock your triggers to one of 3 degrees. You can still push your way past the lock limit to prevent you from breaking the mechanism, but the part that is also very cool is that it will reduce the analog curve of your triggers. In other words, it's an adaptive hair trigger switch that is also software corrected, but without an actual break like most hair triggers on the market. Very clever. Last is a very interesting one, and probably my favorite when used right. It's called vibration. and effectively the haptic resistance will only occur after the controller vibrated in some way. It's a cool feature, don't get me wrong, it's not as granular, as precise as a DualSense solution, but this is as close as I've ever seen to it, and in the right situations, it can give you just as immersive an experience. It just won't adapt its own on a whim, or will it? I mentioned a third way, and it will be the perfect segue for the software side of things of this controller. Right after mentioning that gametechtalk is a work of passion, one that aims to get the pulse and share with you through user experience-centric reviews, to help you identify the products you should mesh with or not, depending on your needs and desires. As I mentioned earlier, you can do a lot of tweaks on the controller itself by holding the little home button for 3 seconds. It'll bring this little menu, which is for the most part very nice to have on the controller. It even has an idle screen, which you can put a static image, as I have, or you can put a small GIF in there as well. It's nowhere near as feature-rich or complex as, say, the Turtle Beach Stealth Ultra, but the essential is there, and really I wish every controller, at least elite ones, would have something like that. Goalie kit. But back to the third method, when using the software, you do have more configurations, and one is to have adaptive triggers react to the game itself, much like the DualSense. With that said, it is entirely community driven, and from what I quickly gathered, there's a bit of tinkering, something I'm usually very keen on doing, and I tried with one game, but I wasn't successful in making it work. So for this review, I decided that talking about it would be enough, something for you to test should you wish if you buy this thing, but maybe don't buy it on that function alone. Besides that, the software opens up a world of possibility, from activating gyro functions, which can be assigned either to mouse, left stick, or right stick, addressing the curve of your sticks and triggers, setting your sleep timer for your controller. It even has a feature to quick switch your onboard profiles as well, but that needs to be activated on the software prior to being able to do it. When you do, hold select while pushing one of the face buttons and it'll automatically switch to one of your 4 profiles. There's a lot more that you can do with the software. Flydigi really did a bang up job with it. Now, you know those adaptive triggers? You can even customize the intensity, the graduality, the dampening, the vibration of your triggers, like based on the different modes you wish to adjust. It's really impressive. Paired with quick switch profiles, you could actually make this controller super custom to your liking. You also have addressable RGB. You can change from breathing, gradient, feedback, which will lit up specifically when using triggers. You can have it steady or blast. You can even shut RGB completely. But another cool feature is the paddles. Now, not so much what they do, right? Chances are you already know what they're for, which is to remap your controller buttons to the paddles. And indeed you can. You can also do macros up to 64 inputs that include sticks, and all are timing addressable, which you can adjust when recording your macro. Again, this software is just as much a part of this impressive hardware, because man is it ever so good. Now, not every piece of software are made equal, I'll tell you that, and it's very much the gift that keeps on giving, because it does something you hardly ever, and I mean ever, see a software do. You usually have to go external solution to do something like this next part. So the mapping tool lets you remap your paddles, but also every other buttons on this thing. Your face buttons, your triggers, heck, even your select and start can be remapped. And you know what's the cherry on top? You can map your keyboard and mouse as well. So to give you an idea of how powerful this controller can be, here I am playing a game, and within a second I'll change profile, Alt-Tab, use my gyro to go change my music player track, and hop back into my game. All that without ever letting go of my controller. So if ever you have too little of 4 configs, you can also save to a file and be able to apply it at a later time. And to accompany this closing video, when it comes to performance, as I've highlighted in my buying guide video, which you should totally watch if you haven't, that controller is something else, and not only in the features that are obvious, but also the ones under the hood. This controller is at peak performance of the entire landscape of game controllers. It's the only product that managed to outperform the DualSense Edge. And look, People may hate on the Edge because of its price, but benchmarking it made me realize just how much of a beast that it is under the hood. And the Apex 4 beat it. How crazy is that? It's hard to knock the Apex 4 for anything, to be honest. And yes, it's more expensive than most, but you know, sometimes you buy a product and you feel like it's totally fair and you were happy to pay the price you paid because what you got in return is absolutely fair, if not more than you anticipated. It's this controller. 100% of it. It does all the things. It leaves no barriers to end users, and I realize it may seem simple to just not limit things, but giving that granularity back to people requires a very well-built software to go along with it. And that's why a lot of our controllers out there are just nice repackaged off-the-shelf part. And I'm not saying everything about the Apex 4 is brand new. The shape certainly isn't. That's an Xbox controller with a NOS tank and its undercarriage. But hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, they say. I like products that push the ergonomic envelope, but clearly that wasn't the Apex 4's mission. Giving us the absolute most no-hold-bars customizable gaming tether was, and this definitely is. Recently, I reviewed the Stealth Ultra from Turtle Beach, a controller so ambitious and with features I had never seen. I was really impressed with it. With this one, it's different because it's a completely different DNA as a game controller, but just as much, it breaks what conventional is to game controllers. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. There's clearly a lot of love that went into this product and it shows. But as we know, there is more than one way to make groundbreaking products, and recently I reviewed the Novas, which, while being stark opposites, are equally as impressive, much like my intro dancing in that video. Or better yet, how about a video that pins 20 other controllers I reviewed to help you find the best one for you?